On June 12th, SpaceX did something no company has ever done in the history of public markets. It listed at a $1.75 trillion valuation, raised $75 billion, and popped 19% on day one. Within 4 trading days, the stock had ripped so hard that SpaceX's market cap briefly touched $3 trillion, putting it ahead of Amazon, ahead of Microsoft, ahead of Tesla. So here's the question nobody's asking. If SpaceX lost money last year, why is the market acting like it just discovered free energy? And the answer to that question is the same answer to a second question, one that matters a lot more to you personally. Who's actually buying this thing? Because in the next few weeks, the answer might be you, whether you want it to be or not. Here's the part almost nobody covering this IPO is explaining properly. When you hear SpaceX, you picture rockets, Falcon 9, Starship, NASA contracts. That's the brand, but that's not actually what you'd be buying. SpaceX today is 3 completely different businesses duct-taped into one ticker. The first one is the one that should worry you. Earlier this year, SpaceX absorbed xAI, Elon Musk's AI lab, in an all-stock deal. xAI alone was valued at $250 billion in that merger. For context, Anthropic generates somewhere north of $30 billion a year and is valued around $400 billion. xAI generates a fraction of that and was burning over $1 billion a month at one point, with its founding research team largely gone within roughly 2 years of the company's launch. You are being asked to price it like a category leader. The numbers say it isn't one yet. The second is the business that gives the company its name, and it's the smallest piece of the pie. Rockets, satellites, NASA cargo runs, crewed missions. Real business, real revenue. Just not the one paying the bills. The third is the one actually keeping the lights on. Starlink. Internet beamed down from orbit to a dish on your roof, your boat, or the plane you're sitting on right now. It's the fastest scaling telecom company in history, with margins that have been expanding for years straight. This is the part of SpaceX that's genuinely a great business. So strip away the brand, and what you're actually buying is one excellent telecom company, one decent rocket company, and one AI lab that's still figuring out if it has a pulse, all sold to you as a single rocket stock. Here's where it gets interesting, because the valuation only makes sense if something forces a wave of buyers in regardless of price. And that's exactly what happened, quietly, months before the IPO even priced. Normally, a newly listed stock has to wait roughly a year before it can join the Nasdaq 100. That waiting period exists for a reason. It lets the market figure out what something is actually worth before index funds are legally required to buy it. Back in May, Nasdaq adopted something called the fast entry rule. It cuts that wait down to as little as 15 trading days for the largest IPOs. Then FTSE Russell went further, 5 trading days for its indexes. Index funds tracking those benchmarks don't get a choice. The rules say buy, so they buy. That single rule change is expected to force tens of billions of dollars of automatic purchases into the stock, money that has nothing to do with whether SpaceX is actually worth $1.75 trillion, and everything to do with mechanical rebalancing. The S&P 500, to its credit, didn't budge on its own rules, but Nasdaq and Russell did. And SpaceX wasn't shy about it. Reportedly, fast index entry was a condition for choosing where to list at all. So before a single retail investor decided anything, the market's plumbing had already been rerouted to point at this stock. If you have a 401k or an IRA sitting in anything that tracks the Nasdaq 100, even a boring, diversified index fund, you are about to own a piece of this. Not because you researched it, not because you decided the valuation made sense, because the fund manager's mandate says, buy whatever's in the index, and SpaceX just got fast-tracked into the index. That's the part passive investing never advertises. The same mechanism that makes index investing cheap and effortless for you is the same mechanism that makes you a guaranteed buyer for whoever manages to get added to the list, at whatever price it happens to be trading at the day the fund is forced to buy. And insiders know the lockup calendar better than you do. SpaceX's structure lets early shareholders start selling a slice of their stake after the very first earnings report as a public company, months earlier than the standard lockup most IPOs use. Index funds are required to buy on a schedule. Insiders are permitted to sell on a schedule. Those two schedules are not the same schedule, and that gap is where the money actually moves. Strip away the hype, and here's the honest version. SpaceX is a phenomenal satellite internet company, attached to a respectable rocket company, attached to an AI lab still trying to prove it belongs in the conversation, all trading at a price that assumes every part of that sentence is already true. The stock has already ripped well past its IPO price. That's not proof the valuation is correct. It's proof that forced demand showed up exactly on schedule, exactly the way the new rules were built to make happen. Maybe SpaceX grows into this number. Plenty of great companies have traded expensive for years and eventually been worth it, but the index forced everyone to buy it, and the business is worth $1.75 trillion are two completely different claims, and right now, only one of them is actually true. Here's the uncomfortable truth under all of this. Passive investing was sold to you as the set-it-and-forget-it option. Low fees, no stock picking, just buy the whole market and let it ride. Nobody mentioned the other half of that deal. The same rule that buys you a tiny piece of every company in the index also buys you a piece of whatever gets squeezed into that index next, on the issuer's timeline, not yours, at whatever price the market happens to be at that moment. SpaceX didn't just have the biggest IPO in history. It had the biggest IPO in history right after the rules were rewritten to guarantee it a flood of buyers who never got a vote. That's not an accusation against SpaceX specifically. That's just how the system is built right now, and it's worth knowing because it's not going to be the last time it happens.